Hello everybody and welcome back. Today's video is kind of a rewind and it's probably going to be long because there's a lot of stuff to talk about, and it's going to be boring because I don't really have anything to show for except for everything that I kind of messed up. And that's what this video is going to be about. Mess up. So, after the last video I started working on the Wi-Fi, and things started out well. I got all the definitions in the code, I made sure that the representations were correct. I put a little tool on here just to toggle the reset and see if something was happening, and everything was going fine. And then I realized I didn't have any code that would do the driver part on the Teensy, and I couldn't find any projects that had done something similar except the C64 project, and their code is in assembler, and it doesn't really match up to what I wanted to do, and it was really complicated. But in the end I took one of my old projects and I kind of transformed it into something that I can use to test this chip, if not drive it. And when I was done with all of that, the chip wasn't talking to me. And I thought, well, it must be something simple. I checked everything twice, 3 times, and there's nothing wrong with this. I went through everything. Yeah, well, I missed something. And then I realized I missed something else. And in the end, I think I missed about 3 to 4 things. And the reason for some of this might be that most of the work that I was doing on the Wi-Fi part and on the MIDI ports was in the early morning hours, where I probably should have been sleeping or, I don't know, not working. And yeah, so what happened was this. When I added the ESP chip here, the first board was this one, which had nothing like that at all. There was no circuitry on here for the MIDI ports or an ESP. I hadn't even thought of it back then. And then I added the MIDI ports and the electronics for that, the optocoupler, the resistors for driving, and I measured that everything was okay, everything was fine. And after that, I went to the newest board and I made a mistake. I was so sure that everything was right that I made the stupid mistake of switching over the lines from RX to TX. So RX from the Teensy needs to go to TX on the ESP chip, and I crossed them over twice. I have no idea how that happened because I'm pretty sure I looked at it like 20 times and I was really sure that everything was right. But there is a crossover from the jumpers to the ESP, and that shouldn't be there. Now, maybe I did get a wrong printout of the ESP. That could have been, because it's only wrong on the ESP side, but nonetheless, there are 2 wires on here which are crossed over. So, for a first start, I did fix this by just putting crossover wires on the pin header, which works. And this made it possible for me to test that the ESP is running. So I can now reset the ESP, set all of the GPIO lines correctly, and the ESP comes up and says hello, and I can get it to talk. Everything is fine now. But then I realized something else, and that went back a lot further than even designing the board layout. And it was this. When you get one of these Teensies, you get one of these nice cards which explains all the ports that you have. And believe it or not, I completely missed that I was using the wrong COM port. Now, to my defense, I actually have this card from the internet, and that card doesn't mention the third COM port. And it's kind of messed up. I don't know where I got this, so this is all terribly wrong. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to make another board with a rework for that, and that's of course going to take time. But I can take one of the boards that I have and just do a bodge job, and it's like 5 wires, and then that is no issue. And I also found out, which took me a bit longer, why Dave from EV Blog hates black PCBs. Because you can't see shit on those things. It is impossible to trace something on here. For debugging purposes, they are unusable. They look cool. They're really, really nice. And if I'm done with this and everything works, I will do another black one because it's just supposed to be perfect. But these green ones do have a pretty good advantage that you can see all the traces, and it's a lot easier to cut them when you need to cut them to make a rework. So I'm going to have to go all the way, and I'm going to have to cut 4 lines on this one on both sides and fit bodge wires. And I'll try to do it on this one so I don't have to rework everything. And when I'm done with this, I will have one COM port going from the Teensie to the other Teensie. I will have one COM port going to the MIDI port, and I will have a third COM port going to the ESP, which means I don't even need the pin header to switch over. And I completely oversaw that. So, yeah. That was pretty stupid. And this has another problem. This actually means that from this board to the next board, the software from the second Teensie will actually be incompatible. Because since I didn't know I was having another COM port, I accidentally used one of its lines as the chip select for the SPI port. And I can fix that, yeah, but it is just going to be incompatible from one board to the other, so everybody's going to have to make that rework if they want to use the SD card reader, which I suppose they will. So, shame on me. I really messed up on that one. Now, for the next release, I have everything kind of planned out. So I've got my new plans, and the new board on Easy EDA already has everything set up in the way that I'm going to have it, which means that the chip select is going to go on pin D15. There are no changes on the supply and amplifier side. And what would be here, which was the selector for MIDI port or ESP, will be gone. And the ESP port now has a direct connection to the Teensie, and the MIDI port has the same. Yeah, that took a bit of learning, and yeah, I really regret missing that. Apart from that, I tried to get a old style printer, but the only one that I could find that I have is actually, it's got a broken parallel port. So I have to think of something and make something else happen and see if I can get that somehow fixed. And see if I can get print data running over that. But the rest of the port is already verified, so I'm pretty sure that that is going to work out. I did realize that the RTC clock on the Teensy is working pretty well, and in fact it's working really, really well, as opposed to some of the other RTCs that I've got lying around here, which aren't their clocks, but there's nothing real about it, and not even time, and they're just counting something, and they have a lot of drift when they get cold, and sometimes they just seemingly forget everything at all. It's a pain to work with them. They were really cheap and they're really just rubbish. So yeah, this is already the end of this video. A lot of stuff for me to do: fix this board, do the bodges, make sure that the SD card works when the chip select is on the other port. A lot of this small stuff, and then I can continue writing the driver for the ESP. I already thought about some of the mappings for communication between the two, how this is going to happen. I do have something like a back channel where the driver ESP can send data to the main ESP through interrupts. That is working pretty well. Maybe I'll use that for Wi-Fi data. I don't know yet. We'll have to figure something out. But for a start, it appears to be working, but it needs changes, and I need to implement these changes before I can continue, because these changes are going to be an influence to all the boards that follow from here. And yeah, it just needs to be done. And that's it for this week. I'm going to report back when I have everything working, and I hope I can do a small demo of the ESP working. Maybe I can get it configured so it starts connecting to an access point. I don't think that I will be having real IP streams or IP connects and all of that stuff. Since the code that I'm using right now has an embedded HTTP server, I was actually for a while thinking that I could put the HTTP server on here so you can use a browser to control what this thing is doing, like modify memory, send signals to the running basic program in here. But I'm a long ways away from there, and for the next time I'm going to have to do a lot of this stuff here, because you just can't see anything on these boards. So that's it for now. I must admit, I really fouled this one up. And yeah, thanks for watching, and see you on the next one.